Well, of all the issues that we're going to look at, this is the one that comes up most frequently. You know how the conversation goes. How are you? I'm busy. And I guess for many of us, life feels like a great plate spinning exercise. So I think for a lot of us, work is the main plate. We sort of set it spinning and there's lots to do at work and so on. And then we've got family and friendships and we set that plate spinning and well, that's all a bit unpredictable. And then you think, gosh, I'm a Christian, so I should think about my Christian life. And you're just about to set that plate spinning, but suddenly the work one is about to crash down and suddenly you're over there and sorting that out. And oh, there's a family crisis and whew, life is busy. And that will have all kinds of knock-on impacts. For many of us, I think we feel guilty most of the time, and it's because we can't invest in all the areas of our life to the extent that we want to. So for people for whom work is a big thing, they end up feeling quite guilty about their Christian life because their Christian life is going nowhere. They're not as involved in church as they want to be, or perhaps their family suffers. Or for others who are very involved in church, there can be that question, yeah, but actually my other friends, they're suffering. How on earth do you go about achieving a balanced life? Well, that's a big question because there are so many different aspects to it. And really, I want to look at two in this session. There are the internal issues connected with busyness. So, what is it that drives me? For some of us, we will be in a context where it's simply our circumstances, or maybe we have an over demanding boss. But I think for many of us, if we're honest, we're busy because we kind of choose to be. There's something inside of us that drives us, perhaps to achieve a certain level, perhaps it's perfectionism and so on. What are the internal drivers to busyness? And then, secondly, we'll think a bit more practically. So, how on earth should I use my time? Those are the issues that we're going to ponder during this session. And I want to say that the key issue is to recognize that Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord even over our time. I think in many ways there's quite a lot of similarities between time and money, a resource given by God to be used in a way that pleases Him. And so our issue as we think about busyness isn't simply going to be what do I want to do with my time? And it's certainly not what great agenda have other people got for my time. The question we want to ponder is this: how does Jesus, who is Lord, want me to use my time and my energy? Now, that's not an easy question to answer because the Bible is quite nuanced when it comes to time and busyness and so on. And I want us to explore that in our groups. Now, it would be quite easy, I think, on this session for us all to share our stories of woe about our busyness. But I'm quite keen that we get into the Bible. So I've given you 5 passages, and they all provide a slightly different perspective on this issue of busyness. Because as I say, I don't think there's a simplistic answer to this. Rather, it's quite detailed and there are lots of different nuances to it. So 5 passages that I've given you, why don't you explore those? And then from those and any other passage you can think of, try and summarize the Bible's teaching on time and busyness. And then apply that both to your internal issues, what is it that drives you, and how does the Bible speak into those? And then any practical suggestions as to how we can use our time well. So feel free to discuss that in your groups, and then I'll do a bit of teaching to conclude the session. Now, as I say, it's not actually easy to put all of those things together, but let me try. Firstly, it does seem to be that the Bible is positive about hard work. So, in a passage you didn't look at, Paul is thankful for the Thessalonians because of their hard work, their labour, their perseverance at the beginning of 1 Thessalonians. Again, you picked up in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul himself works hard and In 2 Corinthians, you see the way in which Paul is hard pressed and has sleepless nights and so on. There's a fair amount of hard work going on in Paul. Again, he tells those who are slaves, perhaps employees might be a bit of an equivalent, to work with all their heart, even whether it's secular masters they're dealing with. Or from Jesus, something like the parable of the talents. Those money bags that Jesus gives us to invest. And again, the implication is we're to work hard as we prepare for Jesus to return. And so all the way through the Bible, you see hard work being commended. Indeed, Adam and Eve were to work even before the fall. Work is a good thing for us to do. And when that work involves serving other people, well, that will be demanding. And in a sense, it will be inevitable that we invest quite a lot of ourselves in that. One of the phrases I often use is this: busyness is the price of compassion. Busyness is the price of compassion. And by that I mean this, that actually if you're somebody who instinctively sees the needs of others and goes towards them, whether in work or in friendships, you will probably end up feeling pretty busy. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's often a good thing. It's using the time that the Lord has given in the service of others. There are many ways in which hard work, busyness can be good. But there are warnings in the passages that I gave you that mean busyness as a good thing can't be taken as an absolute statement. So here are 3. Don't get to the point where you assume the world depends on you. Don't get to the point where you assume the world depends on you. That's really the essence of Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labour in vain. And it's an image really of people working hard as though almost they are God. Everything depends on them. And the psalm is a reminder, no, in the end, it depends on God. And the right approach for us as human beings is very often to go to sleep. He gives sleep to those he loves. We trust God, we pray, and we go to sleep rather than thinking the world depends on us. And I think that's useful for a couple of groups. For those of us who are tempted to be perfectionists. Now, as I say, to work hard at something that's good. But can I say, the outcome of something doesn't necessarily depend on it being perfect. We do what we can, and we trust the Lord, and we go to sleep. I think over the years, what I've noticed is actually the impact, for instance, of some of the work that I do isn't actually proportionate to the amount of time I spend on it. I'm quite astonished at the Lord's ability to use sermons that I thought were a bit half-baked. And it's not to say that I should be content to let stuff be half-baked, so much as to say, do what I can, go to sleep, trust the Lord. Can I be blunt? You are not the Messiah. You are not responsible for everything. The Lord is. So pray and go to sleep. So fine to be busy, but don't think everything depends on you. Secondly, fine to be busy, but don't work for your salvation. You see, there's a fundamental difference, I think, between how a non-Christian works and a Christian works. Often a non-Christian will work really hard because they're trying to achieve something, to try and achieve a certain status, and their very identity is linked to that. It's almost though I need to get to this status and then I can rest. I work for rest. And the Christian is totally different. The Christian works from rest. You see, we're those who've come to Jesus and he has given us rest. Our identity is secure, our worth and value are secure, our eternal future is secure. And we work from that. We work from rest rather than for rest. And I think that if we grasp that, it will actually make us much easier colleagues to be with. It will probably leave us slightly less stressed and anxious. Don't use work to work out your salvation. Work from rest. And then thirdly, don't get so busy that Jesus is driven out. Don't get so busy that Jesus is driven out. Mary and Martha. Martha, hurried, desperate, anxious in all her preparations to feed Jesus. And Martha says to her, "You are worried and upset." Now, can I say that's often a good litmus test for whether we've just become over busy with something. That if we're permanently worried and upset, it's probably an indication that our life is out of balance and we're probably investing too much in one aspect of our life. We've become too busy. And Mary, of course, by contrast, is just sitting at Jesus' feet, learning from him, listening to him. And Mary, Jesus says, has chosen the one thing that is necessary. And so, can I say, don't get so busy that you've got no time to be like Mary, and instead you just get really worried and upset like Martha. Now, often the response is, "Yeah, I just don't have time. I'd love to sit at Jesus' feet and learn from him in the Bible, but I just don't have time." Can I be honest, there is the law of diminishing returns. That's to say, we get so busy, so worried and upset that frankly we begin to be semi-useless. And ironically, it's the person who's taken time to sit at Jesus' feet, whose life is brought to a place of peace and joy, who ends up actually doing far more. I beg of you, don't get so busy that time listening to Jesus is driven out. Because in the end, the joy of the Lord is our strength. We can do stuff because we know a joy in belonging to Jesus. And so those are just three internal issues, if you like. Busyness is good, but don't think the world depends on you. Trust the Lord and go to sleep. Busyness can be good, but don't work for your salvation. Work from a place of rest. Busyness can be good, but don't let that drive out listening to Jesus. Just lastly, any practical suggestions to achieve a more balanced life? Here are three. First, try to remove stuff that really doesn't add anything to life. The sort of constant sort of internet scrolling or, watching videos on YouTube. They don't actually add anything to life. They just take up time. Now, things we enjoy, they're good, and we should spend time on those because God has given us all things for our enjoyment. But those things that don't add anything to life and just waste time, try and remove them as much as possible. Secondly, routine is good. In some ways, the benefit of a routine, if this is possible for you, I'm aware it's not for everybody, is just that it removes almost the decisions and the constant sort of mind going all over the place. So routines like working for 6 days, day off, that's a really good routine. Or the routine of going to bed and getting up at the same time each day, really good routine. Those can help give a sense of control, if you like, to our life rather than a sense of everything being disparate. Not possible for all, but where it is possible for you, it's worth pursuing. And then lastly, I think the most helpful book I've read is by Matt Fuller, A Time for Everything. And this point is totally pinched from him because he has 4 areas of life: work, relationships, including family, church, and enjoying God's creation or leisure. He says in all 4 of those areas, you don't want to idolize any and you don't want to neglect any. Rather, you're aiming for a kind of happy medium. And he says the reason is this: we're limited for time. And so actually, if you idolize one of those, say, I don't know, you have a hobby that you idolize, the result is family and work and church will inevitably suffer. You could do that with any of those 4 categories. And so he's saying in each area, there will be stuff you won't be able to do. You won't be able to invest every aspect of your being in work, or actually in church for that matter. Rather, we're to fulfill our responsibilities in each in such a way that we can do the others. And he says the reason for that is, in a sense, the Bible calls us to do all 4 of those things. We are to enjoy God's creation. We are to be involved as a church family. We do have family and friendship responsibilities. We are to work. And the Bible never prioritizes them, it seems to me. It never says, so invest in church that, your family can take a back seat. By and large, we just have responsibilities across the board. And so in all of those, we'll probably function at about 80%. And that's okay. That's just inevitable. And so it may be that we want to reflect on life and think, have I idolized one such that I've neglected the other? And begin to ask the question, is there anything I can do about that? You see, all of this is about using our time to glorify Jesus. And the wonderful thing is this: Jesus knows how many hours there are in a day. He doesn't expect us to do more than we can. He's compassionate towards us. So in this area, he's saying, come to me and find rest for your souls. And then from that, do what you can. I'm not asking you to do more than that. Do what you can. And we will feel more liberated when we're working for his approval, because he's the one who ultimately can bring us to a place of rest for our souls. Well, if you've got time, maybe you want to talk about the one thing that has struck you from this session.